Hey, She Slayers, and welcome to another episode of She Slays the Day podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauryn Brunslick. So I was thinking about this She Slayers thing. So, if we have boys who listen, and we're going to start letting boys on the show, do I have to call you they slayers to account? But She Slayers is the name. She Slays is the podcast. So are she slayers about you being a she, or is it about you, who's a he or she, following she slays? I think it's the latter, but if I were a boy, I don't know if I'd want to be called a she slayer. I mean, it's weird. It's definitely weird. You guys, I have a boy who works for me now. We are officially going on 2 weeks of my first male associate doc. I realize this is the 6th doctor that I am training. 2 were interns. But yeah, it is different. It is definitely different, not in a bad way, but I will absolutely say that it is creating an atmosphere for me to really reflect on what kind of a communicator I am, what kind of a trainer I am, and become better. So it's great. And I was nervous. Okay, I know we have a lot of very powerful chiropractic clinics that listen, and they're all females. One day down the road, when I've learned even more than 2 weeks in, I will do an episode on hiring your first boy. And we can all chat. But I will say so far, I thought it was going to be weird for my patients. Not at all. Not at all. I mean, I can't say not at all. I'm sure there's 1 or 2% that aren't telling me and yada, yada, but there's going to be 1 to 2% who complain about everything. One thing I was not prepared for is how much because if you're a pediatric practice, especially a pediatric practice like mine that really focuses on helping kids with anxiety, sleep, behavior, things like that, you see a lot of boys. You see a lot of actual little boys, not like the 20-some-year-old boy I hired, 8-year-old boys, and right out of the gate, first time they are meeting Dr. Tanner, they want him to adjust them. There are 12-year-old boys that I have been adjusting since they were 5-year-old boys who have maybe grunted. I've only received no more than 4 grunts in the last 2 years from them. How you doing? Cool. How's school? Maybe I'm asking the wrong questions. Okay. No, Dr. Tanner comes in and he's like, so you play any sports, dude? And they're like, yeah, I do slalom skiing. And then in the spring, I do mountain biking. And Tanner's all like, oh, wow, that's so cool. Where do you do that around here? And they're like, and I'm just looking at Dr. Jess, who's been a chiro with me for 4 years. And we're like, dude, that kid has never talked to us. And here he is just opening up to Dr. Tanner. So it is wonderful. But yeah, definitely. If there was any semblance, any leftover thoughts that I had that I was easygoing, it has been completely squashed by having a truly easygoing human now on staff that I'm having to communicate and train. And this isn't a generalization that women are uptight and men are more easygoing. No, we're just talking about straight up personalities, me and Dr. Tanner. Dr. Tanner is extremely easygoing. And so it's really funny just communicating with him. I can just hear myself just talking so much. And so again, how it's helping me is I'm having to really focus on my energy, being calm and to the point, and trying to remove as much just over talking that I tend to do. So it's been good. In other news, let's see, I squashed the hopes and dreams of my daughter this morning, my 7-year-old. We were cuddling in bed before, school, and she said she didn't want to go to school and that she hates school. And I'm like, you don't hate school. She doesn't hate school. And so to really help her out with life, I went ahead and let her know that well, you better learn to be okay with it, because after school comes work, and you just go to work every day, the rest of your life. Great mom, right? So then she's like, talks to me about how she's really nervous about getting a job someday. And I'm like, well, why are you nervous? And she's like, well, I just don't want to get fired. And I was like, and she goes, I'm stressed and obsessed about getting a job. I kid you not, she says this. And I'm like, well, what are you stressed about? And what are you obsessed about? She's obsessed because there's so many options and she doesn't know what she wants to be. Don't worry. I'm like, girl, you got tons of time. Then she said she's stressed because she doesn't want to get fired. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, but be kind, be reliable, do really good work, and you're probably not going to get fired. And then she goes, but it's hard to be kind. And I'm like, well, yeah, girl, then you might get fired. And so I go like, well, you know what? If you're the boss like mommy is, then you don't have to worry about getting fired. And just like little Zen Buddha 7-year-old moment, she goes, but I'd still be stressed, Mom. You're stressed all the time and you're the boss. Yep, different kind of stress. I guess you're right, kid. You're either the employee and have to worry about getting fired, or you're the boss and you're worried about literally everything else under the sun. So, life lessons on Thursday mornings at 7 a.m. Okay. I know I tell you guys a lot that the episode today is going to be awesome, but I am calling it now. We are probably looking at a top 10 episode of all time to date episode. So we have Dr. Heidi Haavik on, and you'll hear me say it multiple times in the interview. But if you think you are just about to get a boring researcher, boy, are you wrong. She is a frickin' hoot. I wanted to keep this PG, so I said frickin'. You're welcome. Oh my gosh, do I want to go grab a beer with Dr. Heidi after talking to her? Also, there are these moments throughout the year. Okay, so I've been doing this for 11 years, and there are these moments that happen, let's say 3 to 6 times a year, where I am reminded of how amazing chiropractic is. Don't get all up at me. Like, listen, we've talked about this before on the podcast, where it's definitely something where it's easy to forget when you're just like, yep, we fixed your colic. Yep, your body isn't constipated anymore. Yep, you're off your IEP. You're like, that's what I do. That's what the body does. But this, talking to her about what has been proven with research, right? Like us chiropractors, we like to hide behind the fact that we don't feel like we need research but like we see it every day. So it's really, really cool to go like, oh, we know that's what an adjustment does. So like, hold on to your socks. Is that the phrase? Hold on to your underwear. You're holding on to something, people. Great episode to listen to. So like some episodes I tell you, make sure you have pen and paper. Like, yes, for sure. You'll probably want to jot some things down, but for the most part, if you're going for a run, if you're going for a drive, this is an amazing episode to jam out to. I personally told my entire staff that like, I want them to listen to this episode, because sometimes when you're the leader, you're like trying to inspire. And so I feel like you tell people, but your staff's like, I don't know. We sell people 36, 48 visit care plans. Like, I'm just trusting my doc. Like, yes, have your entire staff listen to this because it is fantastic. Also, we're going to she talks about different ways that you can support the research going on. Kirby, of course, is going to make sure that all of those links are in the show notes for you guys. Okay, so Dr. Heidi Haavik is the Vice President, Research and Dean of Research at the New Zealand College of Chiropractic. She's a chiropractor and has a PhD in human neurophysiology from the University of Auckland, and is one of the most popular chiropractic speakers in the world today. She is the author of the book, The Reality Check, A Quest to Understand Chiropractic from the Inside Out. I have the book. I've read the book. It's fantastic. She has received numerous research awards and has published a number of papers in chiropractic and neurophysiology journals. She's on the editorial board of the Journal of Manipulative and Physiological Therapeutics and Journal of Chiropractic Education, and is a review editor in Movement Science and Sport Psychology for Frontiers in Psychology and Sports Science. Holy moly, that is a resume. I didn't know she was on the board of the Journal of the JMP, right? That's just what we call it, the JMPT. That's neat. I think I would be terrible on that board. Like, I think I'd be really bad on any research board because my brain, like, I have 0 Enneagram 5 in me. And so, like, hearing research is super cool, but I'm just like, I don't know, do we really need to prove that? And then, like, everybody on the board would be like, yeah, we do. That's literally our job, Lauryn. I'd be like, oh, okay. Just fire me off the board then. So let's pray, and then let's get down to brass tacks. That's a phrase? That's a phrase I think I nailed. Oh, nailed brass tacks? Yes, on it today. Okay. Take a breath. Relax the jaw. Check in with your heart. Keep your eyes open if you are running or driving, please, but still find your presence. Be here with me. How are you, friend? How's your heart? How's your mind? What are you focusing your attention on? What are you filling your heart and your soul with? Who are you surrounding yourself with? If you're feeling lonely in this island of chiropractic that we so often can feel alone on, I'll remind you that there are tons of people like you that are fighting this fight to educate people on natural interventions like chiropractic, and you're not alone, and that there are communities here who want to be with you and support you and share your wins and hold your hand through the hard times. Open your heart to being more involved in the chiropractic profession, donating to people who are doing the work on our behalf, because it is the work that will fill our clinics with people. Reminders when we are talking about people, that they're people, that we can get so caught up in growth, that and numbers, and whether we're seeing 100 or breaking that 200 or breaking that 700, whatever the number, that these are real people. These are prefrontal cortexes, one after another, that we are having a huge impact on through the power of chiropractic and an adjustment. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, crew, you're going to love this one. Here is Dr. Heidi Haavik and me just shooting the shit and talking about research. Oops, no longer PG, officially PG-13 rated. Hope you enjoy.
So chiropractic was one of your first degrees beyond the undergrad. Did you know while you were in chiropractic school that you wanted to, obviously you kept going right away. But if you knew you were going to be adjusting patients, how did you know that extra education was going to be worth it? Because now you're really heavy into research. Did you always know that you were going to do that? No.
I had no intentions whatsoever, but I've just got one of those really curious minds. So I was loving practice, loving it. And I was practicing, but I literally wanted to keep studying. I was studying the philosophy of education, the psychology of education. Don't ask me why, but I just was. And then I bumped into my science lecturer from Cara College, because she had then moved to Auckland University and she was lecturing there. And she goes, "Oh, Heidi, I remember you from college. You were one of the bright ones." And I was going, "What, really?"
It's that stellar personality. They're like, "I remember you. You were the only entertaining student. Everyone else was lame.
You're the only one that asked questions." He's going, "Come, if you want to study, why don't you come and do a neuroscience PhD with me?" I said, "Oh, Bernie, I'm not smart enough for that." She goes, yeah, you are. And I'm going, "Really?" So anyway, I found it fascinating. So I just literally did it for fun to begin with. And then I just got bit by the bug, because I suddenly got top grades in 5 different departments at Auckland University. And I was going, "Oh, maybe I am smart enough, maybe. And then I adored it, because we were literally seeing, this is back in the late early 2000s, right? So back then we had no evidence that we changed the brain. And from the first few studies I was doing as part of my PhD, we were seeing changes in the brain. And I knew this was big. So I was like, wow. But my only ambition, Lauryn, was literally to be Bernadette Murphy's, research slave. I was going to be her assistant one day a week and just donate my time. I mean, I had no intention of this being my career. But and then she left the country. So she moved to Canada. And that's why I had the choice. I could give it up. And then I was bitten by the bug. Or I could take the job because I was offered then the research director role. I hadn't even finished my PhD. So I was telling them first, I just turned it down. I'm like, no, I'm not, I can't do that. Again, you can see I've got this real confidence, I can't do that. I'm not smart.
I'm not.
I'm not qualified. But then, I'd have to give up the research. So I figured, I'm going to do this. So I kept going. And I took that role, with a real arm twist. And then I've just never looked back, It just took over my life. Here we suddenly, we've literally discovered at least one way that our adjustments work. And that's a big deal considering for 125 years, we've not truly known. We've had theories,
Yeah. Yeah. So I am, embarrassingly, I am one of those people that just doesn't need research. Okay. So me mentally, people will be like, because some people are really into it, and it's when is a great time to have research is when you're being questioned or you have an opportunity where they want to see the research. And then you're like, yeah.
Somewhere.
I mean, sure. We've got research on low back pain, right? So prior to 2000, what kind of research? I mean, if you don't know the answer to this, don't worry. But what had we had up until then?
I know exactly what we had up until then. Up until then, we had a handful of studies done by some very brave pioneering scientists that showed that we could change reflexes within the central nervous system for a few milliseconds. You know what I mean? We had some evidence about low back pain. We had a bit of evidence about neck pain. I think the headache research was starting to come out then as well. But, that was it. And then, so there was nothing about the mechanisms. I didn't need any proof that chiropractic worked. I mean, I know it works. So I was into it. I was adjusting my babies and animals and, you could see it, right? But I just really genuinely wanted to know, well, how can we thrusting on a spine? How the hell can that? It changes people's personality. They sleep better. They feel better. Their pain goes away. How on earth can we do that? And I mean, I just couldn't buy. It didn't make sense to me that we were relieving pressure off squashed ovaries, because I could adjust someone's neck and their low back pain would go away. Well, hang on a minute,
right.
Yeah. I mean, where's the nerve root from C1 that goes down the back? It just is, or the other way around, right? You could do a sacroiliac joint and their headaches disappeared. And I'm like, well, hang on a minute.
What's going on? So you saw, obviously, I think anybody who, once you start getting into that role of research and you realize there's a huge lack of it, and then you're interested in it, and it's always helpful when you start to see that it is doing something. I can imagine studying chiropractic and what it does to the neurology would not be nearly as fun if it was not much. Doesn't really do much.
Yeah. And I mean, it was a bit scary though, Lauryn. I mean, honestly, was scary in the early days because I was right out on a limb. Most scientists don't do that, funnily enough. Most scientists study one tiny little thing that we don't know in a massive pool of research that we do know. And here I am, right on the edge of known science. Chiropractic is a mechanical treatment for back pain, neck pain, and headaches. That's where we were at in the research world. And here I am, no, it changes the neurophysiology. And so you're right on the edge of the known science and you're going into the unknown because we had nothing. So
that's really interesting because you're right. I feel like the way most research projects get money and funded is going okay, so we're taking this previous hypothesis or theory, and we're making a very detailed hypothesis, and we're setting up the study to really figure out this. Whereas if I'm summarizing what you just said correctly, it's kind of let's see what an adjustment does to the brain.
We didn't
How did
even,
you
we
go about
didn't
setting up
even
that study?
think the brain, really, to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
Because again, back then, the theory was we relieve pressure off squashed nerve roots.
Right.
So when we started out, like I was scraping the bottom of the barrel. Like I had a few conference proceedings and by a few of the pioneers. And my professor, Bernadette Murphy, she was one of those pioneers. She was in 95, she published a paper with the H reflex. I mean, this was just unheard of, you know. So it was really exciting to do it with her. But we literally did that somatosensory potential study, which was one of our first, where, you know, you're stimulating the mixed nerve at the wrist. So it's literally the muscle spindle afferents from the thumb going up and being processed in the brain. And we had this ancient old machine, this bioamplifier that had, on a good day, it was definitely a female because she was very hormonal. Like it was on a good day, we got like 5 channels, so we could record from about 3 or 4 different sites. So 2 of them happened to be over the brain, whereas the most important ones we thought were at the back of the neck, recording over the spinal cord. But and so what you can record then is how that information is received or thought about by the central nervous system at the spinal cord level, at the brainstem level. And then we happen to have those 2 that we had left. And my good old dinosaur Frankenstein, she survived and managed to record a couple of channels from the brain. And we saw no changes in the spinal cord, no changes in the brainstem, yet these lasting changes, obvious changes, significantly big changes at the brain level. And even right back then, I was like, oh my goodness me, we have discovered it. And they lasted. Like it wasn't a reflex thing. This was for half an hour after an adjustment. That's all we could record for because it took us about 5 hours to do the one experiment, you know, on one person. But like just showing lasting changes in brain function was massive. Like we were like pinching ourselves going, oh my goodness, this is the first time ever that we've got these documented neuroplastic changes or these brain changes lasting after an adjustment. And it's all in the brain. It's not at the spinal cord.
And this was the early 2000s?
This was early 2000s, yeah. We published that study in the end in 2007. I think we recorded the data, must have been about 2002 or 2003. So I knew. But this is while I was doing my PhD. I had a 3-year-old son and a brand new baby daughter and, you know, a little bit mad, you see. So a very busy time.
A very busy time. So how frustrating, and maybe you just like meditate a lot and so you have no frustration about it, but like when you I don't know if discover is the correct word within, you never know when like you're using certain words within people's profession and they're like, whoa, well, you're not throwing when you discover this, when you publish this, let's say that, when you publish this, how disappointing was it that like it didn't catch fire, first of all, even amongst the chiropractic profession, let alone, you know, healthcare? You'd think that neurologists and healthcare around the world would be like, hey, maybe we should really think about chiropractic as a legitimate profession. And chiropractors didn't even know or care about this. How did you deal with this? How do you?
Well, it didn't worry me because I wasn't really after any attention. Like that was never, I was literally planning on being Bernadette Murphy's research assistant, you know, just donating my time. So it didn't worry me. And I also know how hard it is for people to change. Like it's not easy. If you've believed all your life that you're relieving pressure off squashed nerve roots, and I'm going, nah, you're actually changing the communication from those small, deep muscles close to the spine and skull and pelvis, and their communication with the brain, which makes it harder for your brain to perceive what's going on in your body and the world around you. That can be a bit of a mouthful for people to get their heads around. Mm-hmm. But then I also realized that they actually didn't understand because it's neuroscience, right? Yeah. Not everybody is a trained neuroscientist. At that stage, I'd been studying for like 5 years, you know, so it's neuroscience. It's like a different language. So I realized then that even my students who were starting to understand the big picture and how big it was, what a massive thing this is, like, you know, like you're saying, they couldn't, like I could understand, I knew that they understood me because I asked them questions and I knew they got it, but they couldn't, like I also walked through our chiropractic center and none of them were talking about it. So I realized they didn't have the language.
Yeah.
They didn't have the words. How do you explain this? I get what Heidi's saying, but I don't get what it means, and I don't know how to explain that. And that's literally why I wrote my book, The Reality Check. Because at the time, like even, you know, I was talking to my 93-year-old grandmother and she was struggling to get it as well, funnily enough. So I needed the language, and I figured I needed the language for the students so that they'd understand what I was talking about.
Okay.
And that made a big shift.
That made a big shift. So
Big
then where do you go from that first big study in 2007? And you're like, whoa, okay, This isn't pressure on the nerve root. How do you decide where to go next? Like when you're looking at like, well, do we look at vagus? Do we look at the gut? Do we look at this, like the heart center and like what's in there? Like, how do you start to—
You follow the data. You literally follow the data. So what we did when we'd done that first study, I probably repeated that study about 5 times, and with a subtle twist, you know, like researchers do. And one of the reasons that you're doing
subtle
that—
twist being like technique, like adjustment style? Is that
no, like a subtle twist in like, so instead of just stimulating one nerve, we stimulated 2 nerves. Instead of, you know, doing it just for one session, we adjusted them over several weeks, you know. So subtle differences, but do you still see the same thing? So in a way, we're really trying to convince ourselves and the research community that this is real. This wasn't just a mistake in the recording. You know, like if we also knew, because I was obviously a brand new scientist, you need to actually establish a track record. So we always had like a parallel.
Well, I'm being taken back to science. It must be replicatable.
Yeah. And you need to prove that you're not an idiot. So we're also publishing in, you know, non-chiropractic interventions as well. So I don't know, we had this fear that we wouldn't be taken seriously if we only ever did chiropractic research. So of course we sort of doubled up, you know, everything we did. And then because it's starting to tell a story, then you start thinking quite cleverly about it, again, to confirm that what you're finding. So if we truly are changing the way the brain is processing this proprioceptive information from the thenar area of the thumb, then it should also be sending different messages back down to the thumb muscles. So now we shifted to a completely different methodology. So instead of using somatosensory potentials, now we moved to transcranial magnetic brain stimulation and tested the messages that get sent down to the thumb. Because again, after an adjustment, if we're truly changing the way the brain's thinking about this, processing it, it should potentially be sending different messages. So again, it's like you keep following the data. If this is real, then it should equal that. So then we did the TMS. They showed up to be the same. And then it just snowballs, because then I'd be racing up to every neuroscience conference I went to, which was every year, to different ones. I'd race up to the top people in the field. Don't ask me why. I had this, you know, I would go up to and I'd keep talking to them about their research until they were like, oh, you know, she actually knows what she's talking about because she knows my work, right? Yeah. So, and that sometimes would take me several years. And then I'd invite them to come and do a study with me. Because if I replicated massive changes with a chiropractic adjustment with a world-renowned professor in my lab who is there collecting the data, analyzing the data, then it can't just be me, right? It can't just be that, oh, Heidi, you know. So I ended up with—
Were researchers receptive to doing this?
Some yes, some no. So if I got a closed door, and it was really interesting. Some people, as soon as they found out I was a chiropractor, just about slammed the door in my face, right?
And is that because we have not enough previous research?
Yes. And some people—
So kind of like that double-edged first job thing where it's like, well, you don't have any work history and you're like, so I can't hire you. And it's like, I'm trying to create the damn work history by getting this job.
And also, like, some people have these preconceived strange ideas about chiropractic. But some scientists are wonderful, and that's the people I would find. Those ones that are totally open. It's about the science. You know, if you do really good science, who cares what the intervention is, right? So I'd convinced several professors to do some studies with us. And again, then it really snowballs, because not only then, like, you know, I didn't even convince myself that this was for real until I'd published several studies, and then could have very intelligent conversations with neurophysiologists, right, professors. And that's when the real magic starts happening. So it literally probably took about 10 years of doing multiple studies before it feels then it's very real. Like now it's not just one study. You can't ever rely on one study. But if you've got this solid body and you've done like 15 really good studies, different techniques in different labs, all showing the same story, but completely different methodology in different labs, different people collecting and analyzing it, different people being adjusted, then it's real. And that's when it really starts to become, but I knew even from the first study, because I'm standing there with the equipment. We didn't fudge a thing. Like this was like fucking
right.
I could see it on the computer. It was
yeah. Who's paying for this? Because I know chiropractors are really stingy and are like, well, I don't need research. I mean, I said it literally in the beginning of this podcast. Like, I don't really need research. I find it fascinating and helpful when I really need the research. But on my day-to-day, like, I feel like most chiropractors are just like, meh, patients come in, they get better. I don't need to know how it works. And most of my patients don't. So like, have you
noticed anything over the pandemic? Like, have you noticed trouble? And, did you know that like half the world's chiropractors weren't even allowed to see people to begin with because we weren't considered essential health workers? I know in the US, this didn't really happen too badly, but in many places, like in New Zealand in the first lockdown, we weren't even considered essential workers. Like, to me, that's shocking. And I don't know about you, but have you seen people come and see you and then, I used to get the flu every year, but I've never been sick since I saw you. I mean, how many times do we hear that, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And
we don't have a single clinical trial showing that we change or improve immune function.
We don't.
No, not one. One.
You should stop telling patients that.
And that's terrible, isn't it?
It really is.
But there's actually quite a few studies. There's about 20 studies, basic science studies, showing that if you adjust, a subluxated segment in the spine, it can change these really important neurochemicals that are very important for a healthy immune system. Like we know we can change oxytocin and we can change interleukin levels, certain interleukins. And so, yes, there is some basic science evidence that shows it's possible again. And now that we know it's the brain, it makes sense. But there's not a single study that shows that if you're under chiropractic care, you don't get sick as often or you recover faster or anything like that. And that to me is criminal. And yes, who is ever going to fund this research, Lauryn?
That was kind of where I was getting to the beginning of this, of like, so chiropractors are stingy. Who is going to fund this? Because I know that there are likely, and we're going to see the soapbox. We're not going to enter it, Heidi. We're not going to step on it. But I think that there are more people who would invest in squashing the research that chiropractic can help than fund it. So. What do you do?
If you are a chiropractor and you don't put any money towards your profession's research, then honestly, and I hate to say it, but shame on you, because if you don't support the profession in our future, like it's what legitimizes us. I mean, it's like you said, the only time you need research is if you're being questioned. I mean, the people that contact me and they want to know, do we have any research on this? Do we have any research on that? They're usually in trouble, Lauryn.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And that's when they want to know. But, like if you're not it's like an insurance plan. Mm-hmm. Do you pay for insurance? Do you pay for health insurance? Do you pay? Like it's an insurance plan for our profession. And I mean, it's as little as like a coffee a day or something, right? We're not talking a lot of money, but do you not put $10, $20, $30 aside a week for an insurance plan for the future? Do you want this profession to be available for your kids and your grandkids? Then please, at some tiny level on a regular basis, put something somewhere. And it doesn't have to be to me, of course it should be, Yeah, but like, I just think we're mad. We're absolutely mad. If you just want to live in your own little bubble, fine, fair enough. Just, you do that. But if you want this to change the world, if we truly want to change the world, we cannot live in a bubble. And one thing we're notoriously bad at as chiropractors is working together. I mean, it's just pathetic, really. No wonder we're not getting anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, so in the last 6 months, I've talked to Sherry McAllister and Christy Hudson, who are both on the chiropractic committee progress. acronym. It's an acronym. But that's something that's come up on both of the conversations around this, like just trying to get the profession, because I bet you have chiropractors who are like, oh, I would donate, but I don't agree with what you're studying or like doing your research on.
I don't usually have that problem. Personally, because I mean, honestly, we're literally kind of showing that chiropractic improves brain function, and I have not yet met a chiropractor that doesn't think that's absolutely fantastic. Whatever political side they're on, it is rock solid, basic science, fundamental science mechanisms showing how our adjustments work. So we don't have to rely on a philosophy anymore. I'm not saying philosophy is not important, but we don't have to rely on it because this is a fact. Chiropractic adjustments change the brain, and it's showing quite clearly that we're actually enabling the brain to more accurately perceive what's going on. So if the brain knows what's going on, it can actually respond better. So we just literally live better lives. So I have yet to find a chiropractor that doesn't like what we're doing. And I do have a lot of people that do support us, but it's nowhere near enough. And to me, what's so important is us working together. If we actually truly want to achieve something, we have to work together. And that's why I've donated my time now for must be about 2 years now for this. It's the future of chiropractic, they're calling it now. The future of chiropractic. It started with Chiro Congresses, the leadership of all the different state associations coming together. Mm-hmm. So, which for one is a massive thing, right? Massive. All of the states associations coming together. And then they've set up this big strategic plan. So what should the future look like? In an ideal world, if we actually manage to come together, and again, this is everybody just giving a little bit, just a little bit. But if everybody did, can you imagine? I mean, you shouldn't really have someone like me sitting, on my bum, twiddling my thumbs, going, I haven't got any money. I can't do anything at the moment. I have got the brightest scientist on the planet. I've got almost $1 million worth of research equipment. You shouldn't have people like me not being able to be so busy that, you know what I mean? You should have me run off my feet busy to keep going. And it's not just me. There's brilliant scientists out there. So that's why, to me, this future of chiropractic is such an awesome thing where we literally are coming together. I think probably not the first time, but it's
people who are saying it.
We are coming together, and it's very apolitical. So we are focusing on what we agree on, not what we disagree on. Yep. And we're focusing on our future. What do we want out of our future as a profession? All of us. So not just this fraction or that fraction. So we're really into transparency, inclusiveness, and collaboration. They're the 3 key values. We're being transparent, we're being inclusive, and we're being collaborative. What can we do together and what can we achieve? And we've set some massive, hairy goals, Lauryn, that I pinch myself. I get goosebumps thinking about it. Like, one of our research goals that we want to achieve is actually collecting the data from your practices, because I think there is so much gold happening in chiro's offices. We've seen what can come out of the sterile labs.
Does it matter? So what about there's so many different ways to adjust. Have you found that, like,
so wouldn't it be wonderful if we had the data? Imagine if we were collecting data from most of your patients, from all the different clinics, all the different techniques. What if we could actually look at thousands of patients that, say, maybe came in with this issue or that issue, and they were under this kind of care or that kind of care? I honestly reckon we'll find that most patients are being underserviced. They're not being seen enough. Mm-hmm. They might be adjusted once or twice and then sent back home again. To me, that's bullshit. If you start looking at how it works, I mean, chiropractic, what we're really doing is exercising spines into better function. And I don't know about you, but can you go to the gym once or twice and then be fit for forever? It doesn't work that way.
So I am I would call myself a care plan based clinic, right? So our average patient is, and I'm like scared to even ask this because I don't want to have a existential crisis after this.
I know the feeling.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a question, but be nice. Okay, so I've been in practice 11 years. And when I first started, I would give a care plan that was 3 times a week for 1 week, 2 times a week for 1 week, 1 time a week for 1 week, and then once a month. And I have found now that I do 3 times a week for, let's say, anywhere between 2 to 4 months, I get different results. I get functional, I get anxiety. Okay,
exactly.
So you're telling me that it's good because I see it in practice, which is why I keep doing it, where I'm like, no, listen, I was doing it the other way and I didn't get those results.
Yes.
But sometimes you kind of get a little crazy as a chiropractor where you can start to like feel like an imposter, where you're like, well, how come the other chiropractors in town are giving crappy care plans? Like, how come they told you to come in once a week for 6 weeks? And if that didn't work, to send you for another
scan or something. So how amazing would it be, Lauryn, if we actually were collecting your data? What if we could actually document that your patients were getting better and getting really good results? And the amazing thing is, and remind me to come back to that, is we've recently discovered, well, a few years ago, that we're actually affecting a part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex, which is right behind your forehead. What that prefrontal cortex does is it turns off your sympathetic stress nervous system and it activates your parasympathetic healing, digesting, and repairing part of your nervous system. It inhibits the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal stress axis. It helps you relax, sleep. It helps your mood pick up. It helps you move more coordinatedly. It helps with pain, feelings of pain, chronic pain areas. It helps with your immune function. So it's like all of a sudden we have, like, to me, that's like the holy grail. We've hit it. We now know that will be why our patients have those experiences when they're under regular care. Because it's like if you went to the gym twice and you compared it to someone that went to the gym regularly 3 times a week for 4 weeks or a month, right? Who's going to have the better results? Who's going to be feeling better? It's the person that's done regular exercise, right? And the amazing thing is when you're adjusting people like that, it's not only your adjustments that are going to be having an effect, but they are then in their daily lives, everything else they do is going to be working better. So if they also exercise, they're going to be getting more out of their exercise. We've shown that in a whole range of studies, that when we adjust people, we make their brains more efficiently able to produce force. So you're actually going to be switching on your muscles in the correct order at the right times and actually getting more proper function out of them because they're being adjusted regularly. So it's like that foundational piece to health that you just make everything in their life work better, but it isn't going to happen with 1 or 2 visits because it's more like an exercise effect. But again, it's not just like exercise. It's not like you just exercise and instead of getting adjusted. Like we did one study again where we showed that the effects of a single adjustment session was equivalent on the nervous system to 2 weeks of strength training. Like it's a profound effect on the central nervous system. And if you're doing that on a regular basis, it's like then your brain
How
on a
come
regular
I don't have a 6-pack?
How come you don't have what?
How come I don't have a 6-pack then?
Probably because you're not actually exercising those muscles afterwards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even. you can't even see my stomach muscles. It's just a whole lot of fat there. But that's because I'm too bloody busy doing my research. It's my priorities. But
so chiropractors, okay. So like we've kind of complained. All right, chiropractors, you should be donating because this directly affects you. Like literally, if this type of information became public knowledge, I believe that we would never have to spend another dollar on, the amount of money that I spend a month on Google ads and Facebook ads, holy cow, I wouldn't have to do any of that. So I understand like chiropractors, we talked about them, they should be doing. What about other healthcare professions though? How come like the people who are in your field, like how come the rest of the world isn't getting more excited about chiropractic?
Well, I think we've always been on the outside. So we've always separated ourselves, for one. So I think there's been a lot of really good efforts internationally at the moment to integrate better. So you are seeing chiropractors, getting into hospitals and working very nicely alongside medical doctors, being real chiropractors. And I've seen several myself. They're getting into the Veterans Affairs offices and actually working alongside teams.
Back pain?
No. I mean, no, because they're still, and I've followed one lady around, awesome lady in Florida, and literally went on the rounds with her at the hospital where she was seeing her patients. She was just checking and adjusting spines beautifully. And these patients were having fantastic results. And everybody was referring to her. All the neurosurgeons, the orthopedic surgeons, the physios, everybody was referring to her because chiropractic care works, right? We know that. But, there's not enough evidence yet. Like we still got so much research to do. But so my answer to your original question there, I think we honestly go to the grassroots. Like, I don't think we're going to need so much more research to really convince the medical profession. And we're going to need to do a lot more work in repairing our relationships with the rest of healthcare in general, I believe. But I do think that if we can go directly to the people that want what we have to offer, and they do, believe you me, they do. If we can get straight through to them and achieve that tipping point where people are actually, the drive and the need for chiropractic far outweighs what we've actually got available. We need to double the size of our profession if we actually change the demand. We're only seeing about 10%, less than 10%, right? Whereas if you knew what I knew, you would not choose chiropractic. I mean, I get a chiropractor come to my house because I'm so busy, but that's not something I'll ever scrimp on. So she comes every week, if not twice a week. We all get adjusted. My husband, my 2 kids, they've been adjusted since birth. Like, they don't know anything different. To them, that's just normal. But that should be normal for everybody. Like, one of the biggest reasons we get subluxated, Lauryn, one of the biggest reasons that our spine dysfunctions is stress. Stress. Mm-hmm. I mean, imagine the stress now.
So so let's talk about subluxation, because I feel like when let's say I have an MD who came because they're getting headaches and they're like, okay, they're very like highly skeptical, but they're willing to let me adjust them. One of the first elephants in the room that I have to like talk about is like, okay, we use this term subluxation. It doesn't mean in our world what it means in your world. Like in their world, it's more like a dislocation, right?
Yeah. Partial.
Yeah. So like, how would you, if you were at a cocktail party, how would you in conversation talk to a medical professional about subluxation, what it is, and like what we know about it?
If I started with a medical professional, because that always changes the conversation, I start with logic that is very, I start with a line of reasoning that's very logical to them, right? So I say, have you ever had an accident? Yeah. And you go, yeah. You've had a car accident? Yeah. Or you've fallen off something? Yeah. Well, what we know happens if you have an injury to the spine is subtle changes start to happen immediately, within minutes to hours, to the muscles that are close to the spine and skull. So the deep, small muscles that cross individual vertebrae, they start to change. They literally get neurologically inhibited. And over months to years, you start to get changes in those little muscles. They become fibrotic and stiff. There's fatty infiltration. They change their fiber type. They even atrophy. And have you seen a muscle in a cast where it shrinks? Obviously, I mean, I wouldn't use those words to a medical doctor, but if I'm talking to someone else, I talk about, have you ever seen a muscle in a cast? It shrinks and those little muscles are vital for the brain to know what's going on in the spine. So for your brain to control spinal movements. And they're like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. What's really interesting as well, though, we know that if you get into fight and flight response, so if you have physiological stress or psychological stress, it also has a similar effect to these muscles, switches them off. Local inflammation does the same. And we see this in our chiropractic offices. If someone's got a really badly inflamed gut for some reason, bowel, they end up with low back subluxations. If they've got a jaw abscess or something, they end up, upper cervically subluxated like hell, right? And they just keep getting subluxated. You can't do anything until you fix the local inflammation. And they're like, oh, okay, all right, yeah. So I said, but what's really fascinating is what we also know is there's a similar change in the brain. So you get these local maladaptive changes in the spine, but you also get these maladaptive changes in the brain. And it doesn't just influence the way your brain can perceive and control the movement of your spine, but it also changes the way your brain can perceive what is going on in the rest of your body, where your arms and legs are, and what's going on in the world around you. We've even done studies showing that a dysfunctional spine influences how accurately you can perceive sound and visual information. It's quite mind-boggling, so it literally changes the way you perceive the world around you as well as what's going on inside you. And then I will throw in the odd study because I know them, right? To just back it up, right? Because I know exactly what I'm talking about. But you can learn the odd 3 or 4 key studies that you can throw at them as well, right? And then we've shown again that when we adjust these subluxated areas, who gives a shit what we call it? But the spinal segments themselves can dysfunction. Eventually, you end up with that hypomobility and the DJD around the joint, and after 4 or 5 years, you can see it on an X-ray. But you do not want to get to that level because that's
a big thing.
It's ability to see what's going on.
Right, because that's a big thing that gets them all in a tizzy, right? Of it's not diagnosed, seen on an X-ray, but it's it takes 4 to 5 years. You want to wait that long?
Yeah, yeah. And you can if you like. But by that stage, you're developing a whole set of problems. We now know that the changes in those little muscles, the way they communicate with the brain, is most likely, and this is not written by chiropractors, but the changes in their communication following injuries or stress or inflammation, the changes in the communication from those little muscles is most likely what creates chronic pain to begin with. It's probably what causes pain, spinal pain, musculoskeletal pain problems, and those chronic problems. So if you want to go there, fine. But it's a learned problem within the brain. If you want your brain to learn to be in chronic pain, be my guest. But I personally don't like it. And the benefits of getting adjusted, not only is it clearing up the way the brain's controlling your spine, so you're preventing all of these musculoskeletal problems from developing, but it also helps you, it helps you relax better, you feel better, you can move better. And that's probably because of our influence on the prefrontal cortex, which we've also shown in multiple studies. And as you know, because he's a medical doctor, and I pretend he knows because you won't know, but that's okay. Yeah, but as you know, the prefrontal cortex is vital for your mental health, for your well-being, your resilience, your relaxation, gastrointestinal problems, impulse control, your executive functions. It's the seat of your intelligence, right? It is the part of the brain that makes you who you are. So it's like, all these grumpy men used to come in and tell me that their wives were sending them in to get the grumpy adjustment. Because, every time they got adjusted, then they would come home and they'd be nice. So it's like, and that's how I'd hook it in with all those other positive side effects, because we don't actually have negative side effects, except you might feel a little bit sore and achy, every now and then. It's a bit like going to the gym, right? For the first time in months, your muscles get a bit sore and achy. Well, it's the same thing. We're waking up your spine again. So you might get a bit sore and achy. That's the worst thing that can happen. Your other side effects, in addition to you not developing all of these pain problems, is you might feel better, move better, be better coordinated, have better impulse control, be more intelligent, relax more, be more resilient. I don't know about you, but, I think it's quite a good thing.
So like that MD, you just blew his world up. That's amazing. But I feel like most chiropractors we don't know. We don't
You don't
know.
know. No, I know.
And so then that's what kind of sucks is we're just just go listen to Heidi on a podcast. Go to a neuroscience thing, and it's
we need to learn it, Lauryn. We need to learn it.
We do.
And what I've realized is, this, and I know you've heard me, you told me you'd heard me, and bless you, yes, I know I can be relatively unconventional and reasonably entertaining, but you actually need to learn your own science. And that's literally why we've created Chiro's Academy. So there's a site now called Chiro's Academy, and I have recorded these topics. And I speak slower. I don't swear. I know that might, disappointing to some people, but I literally help you learn your own science. And all of this shit that I'm talking about today is on there. And bit by bit, lesson by lesson, we break it down into an hour-long lesson at a time. Every 5 to 10 minutes, we'll stop and we'll test you with a little online quiz to make sure you're picking up on the key important factors. But bit by bit, you can learn this. This is not difficult. Look at all the shit that you learned through Chiro College. This is doable.
Well, I don't want you to throw anybody under the bus here, but why isn't this what I'm learning in Chiro College?
Well, that's what's changing now. But you've got to remember too that it's actually normal that new knowledge takes a bit of time. So it's very normal that new novel information takes about 10, 20, 30 years to get into the textbooks and to be taught. So this isn't unusual. And can you imagine how many neuroscientists do you think are out there that are chiropractors?
3, 5?
Yeah, literally about 5. Okay. And do you think that they are busy? Yeah, they're very busy. So who the fuck's going to teach? Excuse me, that came out. But who's going to?
My listeners are very used to occasionally.
Who is going to teach this shit? Who's going to teach this? Who get it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's literally why we're working. And we're working in now with several chiropractic teaching educational institutions so that this material does get taught, even if they've hired, say, a neuroscientist that isn't a chiropractor. We're providing them with all the information so that the students can listen to the online classes and then they can actually just have a cool discussion or an active learning session with them during their class times. So we're literally using Chiro's Academy and integrating it in with chiropractic colleges for those that can see its importance. Not everybody does, and that's okay too, because it takes time. I am not pissed off with anybody. I think it's perfectly normal.
Do you meditate? Because for real, I'm like, I would just be an angry person if I were you. I would just be so angry.
No. I mean, I literally, again, I mean, I've got this, I don't know, complex or whatever, but I thought it was my fault for not communicating it properly. So I just worked harder and harder, Lauryn, and in the end I burnt out. So I've learned that's not the best way. so now I've changed. I've got a new model. So now I've got all these classes online. I can give talks online. I can talk to, with podcasts. And it is, I know that within 20, 30 years, it will be a complete shift and everybody will be talking about it. And I believe if we do a good job at communicating it on to the profession, which is why we've built Chiro's Hub, which is another online platform for chiropractors to communicate this material to the public in a very easy to understand language with a little whiteboard animations, quotes, summary articles on like 50 different topics, and we keep making more. So that's to get Hub. That's on Chiro's Hub. At the moment, it's on the Reality Check, therealitycheck.com, but it's moving to chiroshub.com. So it's chirosacademy.com and chiroshub.com. Chiro's Academy is for you, Chiro's Hub is for you to get this on to your patients. We're developing a beautiful little app so that when a patient comes into your office, because we've got like 50 different topics and I think it's about 55 topics, if they come in and they tick a couple of things like they might have headaches, they might have some period problems, they might have a baby, whatever, then they will be sent the information drip fed to their app that is relevant to them to learn about this from us so that you don't have to worry about it. But it would be really good if you can answer questions, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would highly recommend you also take a little bit of time to learn. So they're the three things that I would recommend people do is they put a little bit of money, like put it into this Chiropractic Congress, the Future of Chiropractic Strategic Plan. We're fundraising at the moment, and we will build this big beast to collect data from your offices and get that, millions of patients show that, your care plan is the best, right? Instead of 2 visits and then send them home, right? But you're going to get that from real life data, from real chiropractic practices, from real patients. If you get millions of data points like that, that is worth way more than a randomized controlled trial done in a lab. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So put some money aside, put it to that Chiropractic Congress. We're running out of time for me to talk about the randomized controlled trial we're doing on prefrontal cortex. But that's the thing we're doing is literally, because yes, we've shown we've changed the prefrontal cortex, but we don't know which of those prefrontal cortex functions change. So we're now running a study to literally look at that. So if you like that kind of stuff, then put some money towards that. But educate yourself. Go on Chiro's Academy, learn some of this stuff. It's easy. Well, it's not, but it won't take you long. Yes. And then number 3, get that information out to the public, because if we're going to change the world, if we get through to the grassroots and literally enlighten the patients about the scientific facts. Because again, done in the right language, who would not want to come and continue to see you on a regular basis if they knew what we knew?
That was an amazing summary. Like, I think that's a great point to place to kind of wrap up of like, go donate, bare minimum, go donate, because it sounds like within, we're seeing it. We've seen it with the last couple years, with the pandemic of being like, oh, it'd be really nice if we had some research, it'd be wonderful. And I don't think that's going to go away. We're not trending as a society to not need maybe we'll just trust the chiropractors because they've been doing it long enough. So like bare minimum, go donate, go change your language. So you would recommend, like, obviously everybody should own Reality Check, your book. And where can you buy that? Amazon?
You can get it on Amazon. I'm pretty sure, definitely in the ebook. I was looking the other day and I couldn't find the hard copies. I'm pretty sure we had them there too. But anyway, it should be on Amazon. It's also at HeidiHaavik.com. We have an online shop, just literally HeidiHaavik.com. Yeah.
Okay. And so then Chiro's Academy, how did those two, the Reality Check and Chiro's Academy, like overlap? Are they similar information? So I started with the book.
So the book was the first, and it was so popular, so well received by the profession, that they then started to ask me about, well, what about this topic and what about that topic? And I suddenly realized, okay. So then it started to grow. So since 2014, we've literally started to put together classes. And I mean, each single hour on there takes me at least 30 hours of work. And I've got a team. Like, it is a massive amount of work. We literally search the literature on a topic, anything we can find. We summarize it, we critique the papers for you, and then we literally translate it into Chiro speak for you on Chiro's Academy, and then we translate it into patient language, lay language for Chiro's Hub, so that you can share that information. So if you're really excited about something you've learned about at Chiro's Academy and you want to share that, you'll find a little video or a little summary article in Chiro's Hub that, again, just correlates beautifully, so you can share that information. Like, how often should I be seeing you? There's studies that show you should be seeing people 3 times a week for certain things like headaches, you know. So you want those studies. You do far better a year from now if you let me see you 3 times a week, you know, in this early phase, compared to me seeing you once or twice. You want to share that shit with, you want to share that shit with people. I mean, they need to know that.
Yep. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Anytime. I would love to talk to you again.
Oh, yeah. Are you going to be in the States anytime at any conferences? You got anything coming up?
Well, I'm not actually allowed in the country. So yes, I have got conferences that I'm supposed to come to, and I'm hoping I still can, but your government needs to change the rules. We're not allowed in your country.
Yeah. That's still happening. I forgot that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm hoping. I have been invited to speak both at Palmer's 125th celebration in September and at Cleveland's 100-year celebration in October. But whether I'm allowed in or not, I don't know. And of course, there's nothing else. But I'm fingers crossed. I mean, they would be 2 events I wouldn't want to miss if I can not miss them.
September's a long ways away. We'll see.
Fingers crossed. Hey, it's been so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Heidi. All right, She Slayers, please go. We have all the links listed below. Go donate, sign up, educate yourself, educate your patients. And until next week, bye.